Hi, I'm Chris, and this will be my patch for Jamuary. Today we're doing something special. I will take you through my whole patch on the, what is today, 14th of January, so my 14th patch, and we will patch from scratch. I will try to explain everything that I do. I will try to show you my thought process and my decision making when I patch. And let's hope, I have not prepared anything for that, so let's hope we will get a jam going and it won't take too long. So my personal time limit would be around 60 minutes. And from my experience in this January so far, let's see how far we get. Let's just jump right in. So, welcome to Voltage Modular. I have this melodic backdrop that I just quickly set up for the intro, so that there is no silence, but let's enjoy the silence and let's start patching from scratch. Right, usually the way I start these patches, either I just drag in some random modules for a random idea and try to get a lead line going, a bass line going, or anything that could spark an idea. But today, I do not have any idea. And the most basic thing to start with is a button and a clock. Because I'm very sure that at one point or another, we will need a button and a clock. The button is our manually controlled trigger source. We push this button here, we get a trigger, and we use that to synchronize stuff. For now, we only have this clock. So we set the clock to, let's say, quarter notes, synchronize it again, so that all of these clocks are running in sync. And that's a great starting point. Now we can synchronize stuff, retrigger stuff, get stuff to align with another. And we have this clock, which are actually 4 clock sources in one, that kind of acts as our rhythmic brain. And to get something going, let's use a kick module, micro kick. Since it takes triggers, we can route the clock trigger straight into the trigger input, and the output I will route straight to the output. Neat. There's our kick. Let's beef it up some more. Okay, that sounds decent for now. Roughly, my idea for today is to have a mid-tempo patch. Mid-tempo, that's a neat little genre that's oftentimes associated with Cyberpunk, the game, because it was heavily used in the promo material for that game. And I took a liking to that genre. And since I want to challenge myself with these patches for January, that's what I'm going to try today. I'm not quite sure if I will be able to pull that off, but whatever, we'll try. Mid-tempo is around 100 beats per minute. And that's what I set in my DAW, because this time Voltage Modular is not running standalone, but it's running as a VST plugin inside of Ableton Live. When I do these Jamuary patches, I prefer to use Voltage Modular standalone, because that's a little easier on the resources of my computer. It's not the beefiest computer, not the most hardcore CPU and stuff. So it's always good to have a little more headroom in the performance department. But when I do voiceovers, I need to record my voice alongside the patching, and that's when I run everything inside of my DAW. Yeah, so now voltage modular is running, my vocal chain is running, everything gets recorded in OBS. Let's hope CPU can keep up. Where am I coming from? Oh, I forgot. The tempo, 100 beats per minute. Usually you'd see the tempo up here somewhere, because you can set that in voltage modular standalone. But since this is the VST version, it's set by the DAW, and micro clock picks up on that. So as a counterpart to our neat little kick, let's get a hi-hat in. And I think what would be nice is if the hi-hat played in between the kicks. So to do this, we have multiple options. As always with Modular, there's 100 ways to do the most basic thing, from very simple to very complicated. So what we could do, obviously we could use a trigger sequencer and set it to get another clock going at double the speed, so 1/8 notes, and then select every second in the trigger sequencer, every second step, and trigger the hi-hat from there. That would be possible. We could use a beefier sequencer for that with multiple lanes to sequence the kick and the hi-hat in one module. Obviously, we could also do a neat little trick that I want to show you. We could use a delay module. So we route the clock pulse, that's a trigger signal, into the delay, set the delay to 1/8 notes, and then use the output, not the CV input, the output of the utility delay to trigger the hi-hat. And the way this works is this quarter note pulse is now delayed by an 1/8 note, which falls exactly in between these quarter notes. And utility delay is perfect for that, because it's not a fractional delay, as most modulatable delays are. It just outputs it the way it gets input. So trigger signals are not affected in any way. This is not good if you want to modulate the delay time. So this is not for audio signals. That's not the main purpose of this module. It will work with audio modules just fine, and with audio signals just fine, as long as you do not modulate the delay time. Or do modulate the delay time. Maybe that's an interesting effect. To some ears it will sound horrible. To other ears it will be the ear candy of the patch. I mean, now we're talking about it. Now let's show it. I think discontinuities in waveform are best shown with sine waves, so let's use that. Is that loud? No, that's okay. So, need a little sine wave. Some feedback so you can hear it. We deactivate sync, so now it's free tempo. We can set the delay in milliseconds. And let's so after the short delay, you can hear unaffected sine wave. But if we move this knob, horrible crackles. Well, it does not sound as bad as I thought. In a spectrum plot, you'd see that there's a lot of zipper noise and probably some aliasing, because this delay does not interpolate for fractional delay times. That's a cool sound. Well, anyways, that was a very small... I've been sidetracked here. But I think FM operator, that might be a good fit for this patch as well. Oh, you know what? There's 2-op FM, which was a 2-operator oscillator, FM oscillator. So 2 in 1, and this one is free. Get it now. I'm all over the place. I'm sorry. We're gonna put this aside for now, and we will focus on the drums first before I get into any FM shenanigans. So now we have a sequence of this kick and this hi-hat. I think it's a little bit too short. Let's lengthen it. Let's give it some attack so it has less of a sharp transient. And also, thanks to the attack, it's kind of swooping in, which means that the peak, or which results in that the peak of the volume peak of this hi-hat does no longer fall on the grid. So it gets this little bit offset feeling, which might sometimes help to establish a groove. And at this point, I think it's fair to pull in a mixer. And mix these two signals instead of going straight to the output. The mixer helps us to balance the signals out. And this mixer in particular, micro mixer, has a built-in clipper and a DC blocker. So we can drive the kick a little more, blend it with the hi-hat, through distortion. My number one mixing tool, distortion. Those of you who watch my patch explanations or live patching videos, you know. Okay. So for mid-tempo, I think the kick well, it's probably not the best kick, but we need some kind of snare or clap or noise burst. I think noise burst. Noise burst it is. Let's see. Micro noise. And we will need some envelope generator for percussive sounds. The obvious choice is attack decay envelope generator. Let's see. We will use the first envelope generator of this dual attack decay envelope generator in this CV input that controls the level. We will turn down the level and then patch that to the mixer. Left the second channel free for this noise burst. Let's see. Turn it down a little. Okay, that sounds like a noise burst. Mission accomplished. Let's see if we can make it a little better. Okay. So we give it some more decay so that it is decaying for longer. So the fall off, the level fall off is longer, but we shape this decay. And if we turn that to the left side, the decay gets how do I describe that? The decay stage falls off quicker, but decays for just as long. So it's kind of an exponential shape, inverse exponential shape. I'm lost for words. Let's mute the kick. See what I mean? Also, we will need some attack to make space for the kick transient, so that the kick can still punch through, because that is our main rhythm, or the rhythmic bass, literally, for the song. So we will make space for the bass. Also, we clean up the noise with some high pass action here. Here the color from blue, white, and pink. Let's check it out. I think pink noise is too dark. There's too little contrast with the kick. The white noise should be fine. It's a little too bright for my taste, so a little low passing. Okay, that should do it. Alright, now we have multiple options to sequence this. What I'm trying to achieve is to have it play on every second kick. And again, the obvious choice would be a sequencer, a trigger sequencer, because that's the easiest way. We just take this quarter note pulse and put in every second step. That does the trick. Matter of fact, let's look at this real quick. Perfect. Can even do some. All right. Now that would be sufficient. But this is an educational video, so let's use another modular instead. Let's use counter. What counter does is it counts the received trigger inputs or trigger pulses, counts up to that number that you set, in that case 2, and for every time the counter reaches 2, it outputs a trigger signal and resets itself. So 1, no trigger, 2, trigger, 1, no trigger, 2, trigger. And you can set multiple counts, and maybe we will use that later on to create some rhythm. For now, that's sufficient. We will connect the retrigger CV input to our button so that we can retrigger everything. Let's see. Okay, here's the mode that controls how the retrigger and trigger interact. I think we want to wait for the first cycle. Yeah, clock is a little bit too fast for me to push the button between the hits. I think that works. Let's squash the kick and the noise burst into the mixer. I think the envelope, now that's better. Envelope is too long. Let's actually use some more delay. I'm not liking this. Okay, focus time is over. What I'm trying to do with the delay is to get more impact on this noise burst. So when it hits, it feels like it's bouncing off some walls, gives it some space, gives it some more impact. I think that's okay for now. To finish off the drums, I want to have a faster hi-hat. And again, I have some options. My first thought would have been to use another clock channel, set it to 1/8 notes, use that as a trigger, synchronize everything. And that's cool and all. But instead of doing that, we could use our existing hi-hat module, use a delay, 1/16th time, use the feedback, sounds a little bit like a shaker. So maybe we can still use our second hi-hat. Okay, I like that. That has some groove to it. Okay, now mid-tempo is a very, not groovy, but a grooving genre. And to get some groove into all of that, let's use an amplifier and another AD envelope that is triggered by the same clock pulse that triggers our kick. And what I want to do here is that I want to sum all of our hi-hats with one mixer, then input it into this amplifier, turn up the level, and have the level decreased by this AD envelope. So what's happening here is the kick is now ducking the hi-hats. And here obviously I'm overdoing this effect just to demonstrate, but if we dial it right in, and dial a little bit back on the strength, get a nice groove. All right. So I've spent way too much time on these drums, especially considering for how it sounds. But it's difficult to talk and patch at the same time. So please forgive me that we're progressing so slowly. Let's speed things up. Let's do a bass line next. I already have this 2-operator FM synth, free by the way. We will connect this to the micro AD envelope generator, also free by the way. It's a perfect match because it's a dual envelope generator and we have 2 inputs that we want to affect with an envelope. We have this FM strength and the level. So the level is literally the level of the carrier oscillator, and the strength is the level of the modulation oscillator that is modulating, FMing, frequency modulating the carrier. So it's good to have these two CVs patched. If they are not patched, they are normaled to full level. So if I do not have anything here patched, the modulator is full level, or according to this modulation strength knob, modulating the carrier. If I patch something, it goes up to the modulation strength amount. So this is 2-in-1. It's a attenuator and a strength level knob. Let's see. For now, let's use our signal that goes in between the kicks. So the quarter note pulse that's delayed by an eighth note to trigger this AD envelope. And let's get a stereo mixer in. And now we will use this. Also built-in clipper and DC blocker. Okay, that sounds like very slow house music now. Or not house. Or maybe house, I don't know. Well, mission accomplished. Definitely mid-tempo. We'll get there, hopefully, eventually. Alright. So I will use this sync input that syncs both oscillators, modulation and carrier, resets the phase to the same signal that triggers the envelope generator. And what that does, it gets rid of the clicks. So when we have a very fast attack and the oscillator is free running, it can happen that we open the amplifier or control the amplifier in a way that it is at full level when we're somewhere in the wave cycle that's not a zero crossing. And that results in a click, because suddenly we go from 0 volt to, let's say, 4 volts in a sudden jump, and sudden jumps, that's clicks. But if we re-trigger at the start of the envelope phase, it doesn't matter how fast the attack is, because we will always start at 0. And as long as we do not have a very long decay, that would then be interrupted by this sync pulse, we do not have clicks. Because if the decay gets long enough so that it overhangs into the next attack phase, the sync event, the sync trigger, would result in a click because it hard resets the waveform to the start, no matter where it is in the current wave cycle. So you need to dial that in carefully. But this seems to work. So, little to no attack. Some decay. Little bit of shaping. Give it a more natural decay. Because in the real world, things decay exponentially. And without shape, this is just a linear decay. It goes from 1 to 0 in the specified time, specified decay time. In a linear fashion, you could draw a straight line between those 2 points. So now let's see. I want the modulator to decay faster. And let's give it some attack. Get this little swooping motion. Okay, let's play with the ratios. feedback maybe. I quite like this. Let's see how switching up the waveforms sounds. Start with the modulator. At the very left there's a sine. There's a half rectified sine, so the negative part is clipped to 0. Full rectified, so it's an absolute value. The negative part is flipped over to the positive side, which kind of doubles the frequency, but in a very non-linear way. It does sound funky. The very left, there's a squared off sine. So not a square wave, it's not a distorted sine, but the sine wave itself is phase distorted in a way that it is more squarish. Now that does sound cool, but it has lots of overtones. Okay, I think either that or that sounds cool. I like this little raspy timbre we get here. A little bit less strength. That should do the trick. Now that's a solid bass line. But obviously we can't have it. We can't leave it like that. That's an idea. I don't know. So we need to make this more interesting. And one idea could be to take this trigger and move it to the 8th note pulse. Which is cool. But now we need another sidechain. And since multiple elements will need a sidechain, we can use a second mixer and treat this first mixer as our melody and stuff input, and the second mixer as the final output mixer. So we can remove the clipping and the DC blocking from this first one. And add our sidechaining amplifier here. Okay, that sounds... Oh, I like that. So, Micro 2 Operator FM has a built-in sample rate reduction, which affects both oscillators, so the whole FM chain is sample rate reduced. More lo-fi vibe adds this nice crunch. Nice, it's nasty crunch. We can do even better. Let's use erode for that. Erode is kind of a noisy... It adds noise in a very natural way. More crunch, more better. I want to distort that. Let's use harm clip. Pretty hard distortion. Okay, since we now add a lot of gain and sustain with the distortion, because the distortion draws the quiet parts more into the audible level, we can either decrease the decay to make the overall output shorter, or we can decrease the shape. Or maybe both. Sound good. That does sound good. I think I want to add one more trick. And for that we need an FM operator, or in fact any other basic sine wave. And we will use the same AD envelope that controls the level of our 2 operator FM, feed it through an attenuator, and then into the amplifier input of the FM operator. Now we can add some high frequency. Maybe use the Okay, that just adds some interesting timbre to the overall sound. Okay, that sounds nice. Okay, so now, how long have we been recording? 39 minutes already, and we only have some basic drums and a basic bass line. Damn. Let's remove this micro toggle for now. Okay, let's keep going. Let's add some melody. How are we doing this? Okay, idea. Let's not add melody, let's add a B-swarm oscillator. B-swarm oscillator is very interesting. Essentially, it's a bunch of saws that are morphable to squares that run at randomized frequencies around the base frequency of the oscillator. And that is a very thick yet buzzing unison sound. So let's check it out, what that sounds like. I will use an amplifier module. And the output is stereo, so we need a stereo amplifier. And we can use the 2 channels of micro amplifier as a stereo input or stereo amplifier. And whenever we use both channels and we want to control them together at once, we do not need to use the separate CV inputs, we can also use the global CV. So let's take a micro envelope generator, input that here. I will use this button for showcasing. You can adjust the length of the output gate. If you put it at 0, it outputs a trigger. Let's put it there. Yeah, that's cool. And I guess for that I will actually use a trigger sequencer, not a CV sequencer. So that was a happy accident. I just pushed this button randomly and I discovered a nice rhythmic element. We will use this step sequencer. I guess we will need 8 notes. Reasoning is that we sometimes land in between the kicks. So if we do not land on the kicks, which runs at a quarter pulse, we probably need 8th notes. And it's not 16ths, because I think that would be too hectic. So let's just try maybe this. And since this is a trigger sequencer, we will need a way to convert these triggers to gates, and we can do that with micro trigger gate, which works in both ways, by the way. You can convert gates to triggers. You set the length to 0, then anything you put in here, see, like this, will be a trigger. But if you increase the timing to anything more than 0, then it is a gate with that duration, and you can even sync it, tempo sync it. I think we cannot get away with quarter notes, because then it would smear into each other. Because if this is an 8th pulse driving the step sequencer, 2 pulses or 2 steps are a quarter note. And if you have something like 1 trigger, 1 off, 1 trigger, and we have a gate length of a quarter, then this would instantly re-trigger after this trigger is over. And that's not what I want. What do I want actually? Maybe this. Then we might get away with quarters. Okay, that might be interesting. This is my trigger source. Let's re-trigger. Let's route this to the input as well. We will sync this up, because that allows me to add a multiplexer. Did I type that incorrectly? Well, whatever. I will explain that in a second. Let's just route it up real quick. Maybe let's do it like this and like that. Okay, multiplexer takes multiple inputs and routes them to a single output. And it's like a step sequencer for inputs. So we have this trigger input and we have this counts number. And you can set that. I've set that to 8 because our step sequencer has 8 steps. And if we choose the same trigger, then it takes 8 triggers to advance the step sequencer by 1 measure. So step through all of it, and the same amount of triggers to get to the next input of the multiplexer. So after 8 received triggers, counts 8, it will route the next input to the output. So at 0, input 1 is routed to the output. After 8 triggers, input 2, 8 triggers, input 3, input 4. And that way you can chain multiple step sequencers or CV sequencers. This is not only for triggers, this is for any kind of signal, and create more complex patterns from simple patterns like this. And of course we can leave inputs out to have silence. I think that's kind of cool. All right, but obviously this being in a lower register as well clashes with the bass line and the kick drum. Well, the kick drum, since it's routed through our first mixer that is routed through our ducking amplifier, it's not that bad, but it definitely clashes with the bass line, this jumpy bass line. So let's use a filter. And we will use our screaming filter, micro screaming filter in high pass configuration. To add some distortion. And of course, get rid of some low end. So the way to get more distortion is to drive the filter harder. And this amplifier, it can only go to 1. But here's a neat power user trick. You can double the number of cables, and in the world of voltage modular, this will double the signal. So for most our modules, the CV for amplification usually isn't capped. So for some inputs where the range is sensitive, we need to clamp to some certain range. But for level, especially in an amplifier, that's not the case. For the mixer where there's a clipper, that's a different story, because then you drive it harder into the clipper. But for this amplifier, we can just add 2 of the same connections to double the level. So instead of going to 1, we now go to 2. So the effectively the signal that comes out of this amplifier is now doubled. And that drives our filter a little harder, creates more distortion. That's nice. Give it more release so that it lingers a little longer. Maybe try higher octave. Could be cool. Maybe lower octave. Since we filter out the lows anyway. Oh, that is cool. We can even filter a little bit higher. But I think now it plays too much. Maybe we add another signal, another sequencer, which only plays on the first, and that introduces the sequence. So let's re-trigger everything. Okay, that's cool and all. Let's keep it that way. Now I can hear some high frequency contrast, because what we have so far, except for the hi-hats, is very dark, dull, no high frequencies at all. Let's add some of that. How do I do that? What do I do? Let's add micro oscillator. So you might have noticed in the previous jams, and especially in last year's jams, that I often use FM synthesis, because that gets results very fast, very quickly. I like to use FM. I'm much of an FM guy and an additive synthesis guy. And while I do love subtractive synthesis, when patching, I revert to FM as it's easier to me to get results more quickly. Like here I have this oscillator, now I need a filter, and I need an envelope, and I need an amplifier because this oscillator does not have an amplifier built in. And I need to wire all of that up. And then I have my result. But with FM synthesis, especially with the micro FM operator, I really do love this module. It has feedback phase modulation, and if you just turn that on or turn that up, you get this saw-ish, saw-esque sound that's a little bit muffled and sounds very pleasant, very much like a regular saw wave filtered through a decent analog filter module, at least to my ears. And then you can spice it up by adding phase modulation, linear through 0 FM and all that jazz. And it's instantly sounding like something. We'll hear all of that patching just to get the same. And it has a built-in amplifier. But subtractive synthesis has its benefits, and I do love the sound of it. That's not the issue, especially if you have like two oscillators and you detune them slightly, very much so. You patch them into an amplifier. Yeah, let's use the same amplifier. I was thinking about maybe doing a stereo patch, but looking at the time, let's rather get this going. Let's use this stereo mixer channel for now. Okay. Attack decay, attack decay. Okay, let's turn off the bassline on this. Add some drive. Obviously higher octave. Even higher maybe? Okay, more detuning. Oh, that sounds lovely. I like that. Alright, sequencing. You know what, even though we're almost at the end of my set time limit, don't worry, we will continue patching. Let's take this as another learning opportunity. We could use a sequencer like Agata, which is a very powerful sequencer. It's a phase-driven sequencer that allows you to get results quickly due to the randomization. It has a trigger output. I mean, don't just take it from me. Quantize the nodes. Okay, I'm already getting lost. I really do like the sequencer. It's awesome for getting quick ideas. You can even tie steps together so you can sequence some rhythm and stuff, but learning opportunity. What really got me started in modular patching was the revelation that you can generate melodies from anything basically, but the video that I saw used to generate melodies from LFOs. And I kind of was blown away by that. Because that, you know, you oftentimes get told in modular audio and modulation and trigger and everything is the same. So you could literally patch a trigger signal to the output and listen to that. Don't do that. It sounds horrible, and in a very, very worst case scenario, it could even damage your equipment. It's unlikely, but I don't know how your stuff is wired up. So yeah, be careful with that. Especially be careful with patching large amounts of DC to your audio output. That's seldomly a good idea. That's why I have my DC blocker enabled on my final mixer. So this is really a good final stage. Have a clipper, so when anything goes wrong, some module goes rogue, or you patch something wrong and the level explodes, this will protect your ears. There's some inputs clipped, so all of the inputs are summed, and that sum is then clipped, and then the DC blocker is just a good final step. So your ears are protected, your equipment is protected, and when you drive it a little harder, you get some nice harmonics. So this is, yeah, I wouldn't call it an analog mixing console, because I know for a fact this is not analog modeled. It's just pure digital. It's code. Where was I going with that? I don't know. So, oh yeah, I was talking about every signal is the same. So if you have audio coming from an oscillator, if you have modulation coming from an envelope generator or an LFO, it's all signals. Inside of the modular, you can use those interchangeably. Like, how can I demonstrate that? Let's increase the level. And I obviously can use the envelope generator to control the filter. I could also use an LFO. Or I can use the output of the oscillator. Now I'm a little confused myself. Why is it oscillating like that? Oh yeah, I know. It's because I detuned. I detuned these signals and that gets them beating against each other. And if you use one detuned signal to modulate another signal, so even if the other signal is not detuned, that gets them moving. It's a great way to create interesting respaces, for instance. So when you can use audio signals as modulation signals, you can use modulation signals as audio signals, as we've discussed, but that's not a good idea. You can use anything as pitch CV actually. And yeah, sure, if you do that, let's get this cycling real quick and let's if you do that, let's patch that up real quick. Well, that does sound horrible. We choose a more sensible range. Still not great. Let's get a triangle sine wave blend. Gets better, but this is not a melody. Okay, arguably this is a melody, but it's not a good one. What we need to make this LFO a pitch sequencer is to add a sample and hold module. Let's use micro sample and hold because it's tiny and it works perfectly for this case. And then use a clock source. In this case our 8th note clock pulse to sample this LFO. And whenever this trigger hits, the current voltage that is at this input is sampled and held until the next trigger hits. And if we now take the same clock to trigger our AD envelope generator, we can hear that every node, every perceivable node has its own frequency. And that does sound more like a melody, but it's all over the place. We need to somehow control it even more. And the way to do that is using a quantizer. So instead of having these voltages that might correspond to notes and semitones and stuff, we make sure that they do. Let's go for, I don't know, G minor. So that does sound more like a melody, doesn't it? We can even go a step further and use a second LFO to modulate the first one. To get less repetitive melodies. Or we could go the other way and make it more repetitive by, let's say, using another clock, a bar long clock, that is re-triggering the LFOs. As you can see, this will give us a repeating melody, because the LFOs will now always repeat the same sequence. So they will output the same voltages during this one bar, because then they're reset, and they are triggered within that one bar that results in the same notes. Okay, so we quantize to a whole scale. Now we can restrict that even further so that we do not have that many notes. Let's see, G, that's our root note, let's keep that in there. 2, 3, let's keep that, let's remove the 7th, maybe the 5th and the 4th. Okay, that's cool. But it's playing on every 8th note. If you remember, our bass line does that as well. And then we have this thing. So maybe we want to get more rhythmic interest, because now everything is just pulsing. And while that can sound cool and very energetically, it can also sound very boring. So, oh yeah, I've said that we could use counter to sequence stuff, so let's do that now. We will use our 8th note pulse, make sure that our retrigger hits. Okay, and instead of using the pulse to control this, we will now use the combined output of the counter. And we will also connect the retrigger to this bar counter. Oh, I was wondering why some of the hits sound muffled and others don't. Yeah, simple. It's because some of the hits are ducked by the sidechain. You can't quite hear that in action because the drums are missing. If you re-enable the drums, it makes sense. It's a very strong sidechain, but it's needed to get that bounce. Okay, let's see, what can we do? Do I like that rhythm? I'm not sure. So we combine all of these counters. So now every 2nd, 3rd, 9th and 11th 8th note will result in a trigger, and every combination thereof, or the combination thereof in particular. We can even go one step further and sync our oscillators to that trigger so that they hit. We can purposefully make them out of phase So they are detuned, that they do not start at the same phase and then detune from there, but start out detuned. Since we have a little bit attack on the AD envelope that controls the level, we do not have to worry about clicks. So that's cool and all. I think that works better. Okay, now we have settled on G minor. So it is time to add some pitch CV to the bass line, because now it's playing Cs. And C, that is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, the fourth, which is a harmonic interval. But the bass line, we need that to really focus on the root note. So we'll use a DC source, micro DC source, my favorite DC source, obviously. I'm certainly not biased. Yeah, certainly not. I'm just a developer, but no bias here. Nah, let's be for real for a second. The neat part about this is that we have this knob where we can adjust the scale. So we can have continuous, and then we can select from -5 to +5 volts and everything in between. We can set this to whole volts, which is nice, so that you can have, let's say, octave offsets. It's really a neat feature if you have, if you want to patch some FM patch where the integer ratios sound best. Or you can set notes when you just want to set the corresponding voltage level to a note. In this case, G, which is 0.58 volts. Let's see, ratio 2, ratio here is 1. So we might even be able to go down. Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, I like this. Let's see. This is still out of tune with the rest of the patch. Well, not actually out of tune, because bass tuning is C2. See, we have octave 1, so this is a C1 actually. But it's a fourth interval. Maybe we can make this a fifth interval, so that it is not also playing the root note. So that might be a little bit much. Let's use D. Because D, that is in the scale, it's the fifth. So we already have parts of a chord going between the bass line and this ominous element. What would you call it? It's not quite a pad sound. It's not a bass sound. It's not a percussive sound. Let me know in the comments. What is that? Is that a lead sound? Speaking of, let's turn the release a little bit up again. In fact, let's add micro diffuse, which is not a reverb, it's a diffuser. I don't know why I mentioned that every time I pull that out. I mean, basically I oftentimes use it as a reverb. It does sound nothing like a reverb though. But I think it sounds great on these atmospheric sounds that just need a little bit of room, a little bit of resonant room. Let's hear it in isolation. Yeah, that was missing. I like that. I think the bass line, that is done maybe. Maybe add some more clipping distortion. Okay, what I'm really missing from this nice lead line, some delay. Let's see which delay could be cool. Maybe ping pong delay. Get some stereo width going. Switch that around. Okay, that's cool. Maybe we can add some chorus. Let's use Neon Hologram. Because it is our cyberpunk inspired chorus after all. Synthwavey, cyberpunky. Okay, the signal is now very low. I think I will boost that with a clipper. Okay, that sounds awesome. And it kind of sounds a bit repetitive, so I will let you in on another secret. We will use this bar note clock, so 1/1, 1 bar, and trigger a second sample and hold channel. We'll use another LFO that we will set to, I don't know, 75, a little bit of offset. Set that to quite low frequency. I don't know, triangle sine, that's fine. And we will sample that as well and input that into the quantizer. So every time the sequence repeats, a small offset is added. Sample from this LFO is added. We don't even need to re-trigger that. Let's keep that random. do not have a spelling mistake. That'll be embarrassing. Pretty neat. Alright, let's label some stuff. Because this is a learning experience, obviously. And since this is also obviously a promotion, let's add a blank. This is too big. If you forget my name, our modules. Yeah, this blank, it is not nice to my brand name. The idea is to have it in vertical text, and therefore we need to put one letter after the other in vertical. But if you have some special letters like this underscore, it just does not look right. But there's an easy fix for that, and we have a little bit of space here. Just write it like that. Easy. By the way, promotion, like and subscribe. If you've made it this far, congratulations first of all. And second of all, please like and subscribe. Helps keep the channel going. Helps spread the word. Thanks. Jamuary25. Oh, I like this. It is nice and groovy. Maybe we need to play with the leveling a bit. Where is my mixer here? Or maybe, let's see, if I reset the tuning, kick drum is tuned to C2, so pitch CV works here. Let's use our G, so that the kick drum is in key with the bass drum. Since this is now a lower tuning, we can allow for more pitch dive. Maybe we can even yeah. I think that's it. Okay. So basically the patch is done. Let's real quick save that. Jamuary25. It's day number 14 and this is 100 BPM. I save the beats per minute that the patch is at with the patch name because in standalone the tempo is not saved with the patch, which is kind of curious because the output volume is saved but the tempo is not saved. I mean, it makes sense if you set a tempo and you switch between presets, you have multiple presets, it's playable, you do not want the tempo to change. But if you have a patch like that, it's basically a self-playing song, you want to set it to the right tempo. Well, anyway, so now only half the work is done. Oh, okay, let's say 3/4 of the work is done. In order to be able to jam that, we need to do some MIDI mappings. MIDI mappings, that's a nice word. I have my trusty MIDI controller, it's a Fader Fox EC4. I really do like this MIDI controller. It's just a bunch of knobs, rotary knobs, it's 60 knobs that I can twist, and it's very responsive. It has a lot of features that I do not use, but I could use them. That's great. For jamming live, I usually, let's see, look for controls that I can map to my MIDI controller, so that I have control over some timbres or elements of the song. And usually that starts with being able to fade in and out elements. So let's start with the drums. Guess that is the main drum. Okay, it's simple, MIDI learn, twist the knob, and it's there. Then we go to the MIDI menu, and here we can adjust the minimum and the maximum value. So here, if I leave that setting here, then I turn the gain up to high. So let's put it roughly to where it was before. That is not where it was. Okay, that does sound good though. We can even adjust the curve from exponential to logarithmic. Which we might even do in that case. But okay, let's do the bass line next. Let's see, we have this level CV. Do we have some common? Well, the bassline, actually the bassline does not have any delay or any time-based effect that we can cut off. So to explain or to elaborate, usually in the patch I look for places where I can control the level that is before any time-based effects. So let's take this lead for example. If we just cut it off, any delay tail or reverb tail is harshly cut off. But sometimes it's better to have them ring out or decay naturally. So let's see, we have this amplifier here. And that's a perfect example. Let's take this attenuator value, attenuator knob. We need to map it a little bit more carefully because it can map in positive and negative direction. So we have to cut it off at 50%. So now you can see, if I cut it away, the delay still rings out, and I made a mistake. I learned the wrong knob. So let's do that again. So on my MIDI controller, it's a grid of 4x4, and I usually use the bottom row to control level of everything. And yeah, I have a setup that I'm used to, and it's hard to get used to a different setup. So the first knob on the very left is usually drums, the second bass line, then there's pads and lead, which do not have such a strict order, but bass line and drums do have a strict order. And if I do not adhere to this logic, then patching is, not patching, playing the patches is more difficult. And I try to avoid making it more difficult. Alright, so here we have this ominous sounding thing that is routed through the micro diffusion, which adds a tail. We do not want to cut that off. So let's use, again, another CV control. And this is a perfect fit because the amplifier is muted. The level is turned down. So if there's no CV incoming, then the amplifier won't open. So by cutting off the CV, we cut off the sound. And get more feedback. Yeah, you hear that as very metallic reverberation. All right. So essentially you could start jamming with this now. Let's say I have this ominous sounding thing. Then I get the pretty lead. Prepare for the drop. Turn the lead off, let it ring out. And then hit you with the bass line and the drums. Okay, so enough fun. Back to MIDI mapping. So with only level control, you can still do lots of things. You can sequence stuff, make patches more interesting, and that's already a lot. So if you have a MIDI controller with only four knobs, that's perfectly fine. But since I do have a MIDI controller with more knobs, I can map more things. And so let's do hi-hats next. We have the hi-hats all controlled by one mixer. So let's use another knob to control that. So we can take away the hi-hats for more impact on the kick. And usually I would map this noise burst to something. Speaking of, I can barely hear it. Now that's a bit better. Where is it? I think that's okay. All right, so next candidate for some MIDI mapping could be the bass line, but yeah, the bass line, it really does not have many elements. I see. Maybe we can map this chopper. Well, it doesn't do that much. Okay, I think that works. But we have to set it to a very high setting. Also, I do not want to have it active the whole time, because that also does mess with the bass. And if it's not active, then the amount is too much. It adds too much noise. Now that's cool. I can map this blend knob. Which blends the noise with some sine modulation. So you wrote, essentially what it does is phase modulation. Phase modulation on any signal with a noise source or this sine source. Which adds a nice fizzy top or sounds a little bit crushy with the sine wave. Okay, that gives us some modulation capability over the bass line. It's not as much as I would have hoped. Maybe we can map the strength knob. Okay, that's cool. Maybe that's a bit too much on the strength. So there's always the possibility that if you MIDI map something, you lose the original setting. That's why I'm very careful not to map the sample rate, because I have it at a setting that I like. And it's quite difficult to find the right range for this knob. Yeah, I think that's enough for the bass line already. I do not know if I want to map anything here. I think prime candidate would be the frequency of the high pass filter. That would be cool. Maybe the release time, but it's playing so infrequently. There isn't much use to mapping anything here. Here, however, there is a good candidate. We have only one envelope generator playing or controlling the amplitude and the filter cutoff. So perfect. Decay is always a very good. So usually when I do MIDI map stuff, I try to have either the lower bound or the upper bound mapped to a usable value. But sometimes it can be cool to go a little bit below and a little bit above, or a little bit above. But when playing the patch, you have to be more careful when setting the knob, so you can't just yank it fully open, yank it fully closed and be at a useful value. You have to sometimes place the knob more carefully. But as a bonus, you get more delicate sounds sometimes. So what else can we do? filter cutoff, always a prime candidate for mapping. Or even CV strength. Maybe let's maybe do that. That might be a good idea. Okay, I think that's it. Listening to it now, I think we have lost some volume. I think that works better. But if we add some more decay, it gets too loud. So a logical consequence would be to add an inverse mapping here. So this is roughly where we want to be. And now if we increase the decay, we decrease the output gain of the clipper. Okay, I think that works. One more thing that we can do. Now you see if we take away the drums, the sidechain is still hitting hard. Do we have this not mapped somewhere? We can maybe add another mapping to remove the sidechain. Yeah, so usually when I do map the sidechain amount, I map it to the kick drum or the overall drum mix. So if I turn down the drums, I turn down the strength of the sidechain as well, so that I do not get clicks when the drums are not playing, because usually sidechain clicks because nothing is synced to this trigger. And when the kick is not playing, the click is very audible. When the kick is playing, the click is even beneficial because it adds some transient to the kick. But in this case, the whole patch relies on the bounce that is given by the kick drum and the sidechain of the kick drum. So when I take that away, stuff sounds weird, not bouncy. So in order not to accidentally move this knob, we will remove the mapping and be done with that. Let's see. Maybe this ominous sounding pad thing is a bit too loud now. Maybe even set the frequency higher. Okay, that's cool. And with that, I guess we're done. Save it one more time. And yeah, that's it. Now it's already quite late at where I am, so I will end the video here. 45 minutes after the planned ending. But I hope that my explanation and showing you this stuff has helped you out a little. If so, please leave a like, subscribe. Yeah, it's weird that YouTubers have to beg for liking and subscribing, but it's a psychological thing. When I watch videos, I just forget to like it. I like the video, but I forget, and if I get reminded, I do it. And that kind of is why I try to remind you as well. So if you like the video, please like, don't feel obliged. If you dislike the video, yeah, hit the dislike button. But if you made it this far whilst disliking the video, why are you hate watching me? Yeah, even regardless, I don't care. Keep hate watching me. That's good for my reach. But yeah, just joking, kidding aside. I hope you learned something. If I messed up somewhere, let me know in the comments. I'm trying to learn still. If the leveling between the audio and the voice is off, let me know in the comments. I try to level it a bit, but it's always hard to judge. If you want to know more about some technique that I described or half described and then went on a tangent or digressed somewhere, I don't know, let me know. If you want to know anything else, also let me know. Feel free to ask anything. I'll try to do more patch explanation videos. But yeah, time is very much limited, and as you can see, it takes a long time to create these patches, and it takes double the time to create these patches while talking about them. And I guess it takes even longer to explain the patches after creating them. Okay, I will start yapping now. I will record the jam now. Hope I'm doing well. I'll practice for a bit and then I just hit the record button and try to get something going. Hope you enjoy. Until then, have fun patching, have fun implementing the tricks that I've shown you, and see you around. Bye.